I'll come in. Shall I just sit there?
I can move one seat if you want to sit all together.
Careful of the, don't fall over.
I can have one seat if you want. Or not.
Chairs.
Nah, it's okay, don't worry.
Which, what are you streaming for?
String 4 golden roses.
Okay.
And
Can you show me,
so it's
yeah?
yeah. And
Okay. Yeah.
There we go.
and then,
Make a move down. Start down.
yeah.
Well, good evening everybody, and welcome to this 3-day conference of the Golden Rosy Cross, which is also known as the Lectorium Rosicrucianum. I'll just go through with you the programme for the weekend. Tonight we have a presentation which will be part of a book launch on the mysteries and symbols of the soul with Andre over there. Tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock we have a public talk entitled Let Spirit, Soul and Body Become One. And on Saturday at 4 o'clock we have a public talk, Karma, the Personality Soul and the Spirit Soul. At the back of the room we have some books which are produced by the Rosy Cross Press, which is a part of the Golden Rosy Cross, the Lectorium Rosicrucianum. And there's also some magazines there which are free, called Pentagram. And I'll be very brief because you're here to hear Andre, not listen to me. So I'll just do a brief introduction to Andre. Andre de Boer is from Holland, and he's the author of various books. The 3 books which are the most recent is this one, which he's going to talk about this evening, Mysteries and Symbols of the Soul. He's also written another book, Spiritual Christmas. All these books are on sale at the back at a reduced rate of this. For this conference, this one is £10, and it is a very interesting book. He's also written another book on Easter and Pentecost. Andre will give a presentation of his latest work, Mysteries of the Soul, and there'll be plenty of time during his presentation for some audience participation. You can ask him questions. Now, just to set the tone for the evening, I'd like to just read a very short meditation on the soul, and this will also, there will also, after this meeting, we'll have a break for about 10-15 minutes, and then there'll be a short contemplation service, which you're all invited to attend. So, just to set the tone for the evening, I'd like to read the short meditation. Here below, O soul, is the physical world, the abode of unsatisfied desire, fear, degradation and sadness. There above is the thought world, the abode of satisfaction, freedom from fear, high dignity and joy. You have seen both worlds and had experience of both. Now make your choice between them in accordance with your experience. You can dwell in which of them you will. You will not be repelled or rejected from either. But it is impossible for a person to be at the same time vexed with unsatisfied want and fully satisfied. to be tormented by fear and free from fear, exalted and degraded, joyful and sorrowful. And therefore it is impossible for a person to combine love of this world with love of the other world. That cannot possibly be done. You have grown forth, O soul, from a certain tree trunk, and of that tree you are a branch. However far the branch may go forth from its trunk, there is still connection and contact between trunk and branch, whereby every branch seeks nutrient from its trunk. If anything were interposed between the trunk and the branch, it would cut off from the branch its supply of nutriment, and so the branch would forthwith wither and die. Meditate on this, O soul, and be assured that you are destined to return to your Creator, who is the trunk out of which you have grown. And for that reason, rid yourself of the defilements and burdens of the physical world, by which you are hindered from returning to your own world above, and to the trunk out of which you have grown. And that is a quote from the Corpus Hermeticum. I'd like to introduce Andre. Thank you very much. Andre?
Thank you, George, for the nice introduction, also for the nice spiritual text from the Hermetic tradition. Hermes Trismegistus, this was a legendary initiate, an Egyptian wise man, and we will talk about him later. Tonight, I would like to split this talk in two parts. The first part is about the mysteries of the soul, and the second part is about the symbols of the soul. And between them, we have time to exchange. You can ask questions, make comments, or anything like that. I would like to start with a question. Not a question I would like to an answer on, but it is a rhetoric question. And that question is, imagine, how would life look like if every human being would live fully from the soul? I think the world would be much better than we now experience it. If we want to explore the soul, we can compare it with exploring an elephant. Exploring an elephant by a blind man. We see a blind man with a trunk, and he thinks an elephant is a snake. And another one, he feels the ear of the elephant, and he thinks it's a fan. Another one is embracing the leg, and he thinks it's a tree. And the last one, the tail, he thinks it's a rope. They're all blind, and they try to make an image of an elephant. And it's the same with the soul. We can explore aspects of the soul, but we cannot have a fully image of how it really is. And if they talk together and they want to make a new model of an elephant, maybe they come to something like this. Another comparison is this. What we experience from the soul, everyone is ensouled, is only a shadow from the real. Like this. We can see a shadow as a square or a circle, but actually it is a three-dimensional body. So we have only experiences in a third-dimensional world with time and space, but there are more dimensions, and the dimensions of the soul are so big, so huge, we can never grasp it by our rational thinking. So we always have to talk about mysteries. They stay mysteries. They can become more clear, but they always stay mystery. What is life all about? Some say life, we can distinguish 3 stages: learning, earning, and returning. But that's a very old model. It doesn't fit in these days. Often it's like this. In a hamster wheel, we are running and don't make progressions. And eventually, we become old. Is really life about learning, earning, returning, and burning? There's much more. There's much more. Ashtavakra, it's a Hindu teacher from India, he said, earth, fire, water, and the sky, you are none of these. If you wish to be free, know you are the self, the witness of all these, the heart of awareness. He says we are not our body, we are not our personality. Actually, we are the self, we are the soul, we are the consciousness. And then another wise man, we called him already, it's Hermes Trismegistus. Of course, only a drawing, we don't know how he looked like. But he said, beyond all creatures on earth, man is twofold. Mortal because of the body, but because of the essential man, immortal. Mortal and immortal, both at the same time. And many spiritual traditions, they talk about the spiritual spark, the divine principle in the heart. It's not physical, but we can experience it. It's called the spirit spark, the primordial atom, but also with other symbolic terms, like the rose and the lotus in the east, and the pearl. Hermes Trismegistus says, now focus your heart on the light and know it. So he encourages us to give attention to the spirit spark, to the divine principle in our heart, which is like a seed, and it can grow and become huge. This is a representation of what we call the microcosm. It's a symbol, it's a concept from the Middle Ages. We can see man as a physical body, of course, and in the heart there is the rose, the spirit spark, but there's much more. There's an aura, and there's also a huge microcosm. This is not correct, of course, because it is a two-dimensional picture, and the soul, in essence, is more dimensional. And the idea is, in many spiritual traditions, the microcosm, there is a lot of pollution in it, also in the whole human system, and we can go a spiritual path to clear that all, and then it can become a nice, clear microcosm. And then man becomes immortal. The microcosm is immortal, but the physical body, of course, dies. We will come back on that on Saturday, to talk about karma and the wheel of life and death. Going a spiritual path, there are of course many religions, many world religions, and if we look superficial, they are all different. And often they fight with each other because they think they have the truth. But actually, they came from a high divine realm, like this. We can call it paradise, Tao, or heaven. And the books are not only written by a person, but they are inspired by spirit and wrote it down. And I think we can say that about many spiritual texts. And that's possible because there is a connection between the heavenly world, the paradise, Tao, also called Nirvana or Pleroma, Gnostics. And these are the differences. Eternal versus temporary, unity versus the multitude, and the divine versus the natural. And there's a connection between them. And there are levels of consciousness. We are here low consciousness level and high consciousness level. And if one grows in a certain tradition, consciousness raises, we can experience that all these religions are from one source, a divine source, and the connection we can call consciousness, and that can grow. We can absorb energies from the source and make them work in our body or our system. A source, they often speak about 7 rays, 7 colors. We can arrange them like this. If we look at traditions, spiritual traditions from the spirit spark, from the primordial atom, and we look at all that traditions, we see there are many similarities because they are all about the healing of the microcosm. We need food, of course, for our body, but it's very important that we not only use physical food, but also the soul needs food. What is the food soul? In the classical text of the Rosicrucians, they appeared in the 17th century. It's the Fama Fraternitatis, the Lavesio Fraternitatis, and the alchemical wedding of Christian Rosicross. There are called 3 books, mentioned 3 books, the book M, the book H, and the book T, and it's not written what it is. Many researchers think that M is for mundi, the world, H is for man, or homo in Latin, and T is for theos, or God. We can make a connection with the soul, the world of the soul, by reading all those books. For instance, the book M, the book Mundi. It's possible to be in a state of consciousness to see in everything what is manifested, the divine. And if we experience that, it will transform us, not only with the world, the physical world, but also in ourselves. The divine is also in man, and it wants to blossom. And theos, or God, it refers to the sacred text, many spiritual texts from the same source. If we contemplate on them, we will absorb energies and change our state of being. This is another way to have an arrangement, because here we have earth and heaven, and man is mentioned, is destined to become a living connection between earth and heaven. So not only fascinated by earth or flee in heaven, but be a living connection. Here is a statue of Hermes, the Greek god Hermes. He was a messenger of the gods, and he flew from the earth to heaven to bring messages from the gods to the earth. And we also can become a Hermes Trismegistus, or Hermes. The book, Mysteries and Symbols of the Soul, the first part is about 9 spiritual texts from different traditions. And after each spiritual text, there is a reflection. And the traditions are the Advaita Vedanta from ancient India, Hermetism, Kabbalah, Gnostic Christianity, Raja Yoga, Judaism, Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, and Pauline Christianity. And connected with these sacred texts, spiritual texts, are the 9 chapters. And these are the names of the chapters. Living from a sense of unity, transcending dualities, connecting the 3 grades of the soul, development in the 4 worlds, controlling the 5 states of mind, renewal through 6 emanations, using the 7 golden keys, and conveying the 8-fold path, and last, working with the 9 spiritual gifts. That's a lot. It's very difficult to talk there to explain it in a short talk. So I would like to give you the possibility to ask questions or to make comments.
What do you think the source is? You mentioned earlier on the source. What's
The source, the divine source. The idea is that there is a divine principle. We don't know. Nobody can know it.
What do you think the source is?
The source is.
What do you think the source is?
The source, I think, it's called. We can mention it.
What do you think?
We can call it Tao, but in the Tao Te Ching it said the Tao that can be mentioned is not the real Tao, and the name that can be mentioned is not a real name. We cannot. We can talk about it, but we cannot experience it at full level. And everything what exists came from the one source, and then it's.
How do you know it came from one source?
Yes.
How do you know it came from one source? Why?
I don't know it personally. It's in all traditions, all spiritual traditions. They say, but there's one source, and everything came from there.
So do you believe that to be one thing, one source?
I believe so, but that's not a physical source. That's a purely spiritual source.
Yeah.
Yes, and then it became more dense till our physical world. Our physical world we can experience with our senses. Some people say it is illusion, but we can experience it, so it's not illusion. We live in illusion if we think that this physical world is the only world. There are many more other worlds that we can experience. And in spiritual traditions, they teach it's possible to go a spiritual path to be a living connection between the source and the physical world. To make everything, it's difficult to do. Yeah, you can. Excuse me. Yes?
What is Pauline Christianity?
Pauline Christianity is meant by Pauline Christianity is here that Paul, the Apostle Paul, wrote many books, and they are in the Bible. So the last text is about Corinthians. It's a text by Paul. So that's Pauline Christianity. Yes, please.
All right. So you can do meditation, you can do yoga,
Yes.
and you can do fasting.
Yes.
You can find these, and you can find this. Hello. And hello, 1, 2.
1 second.
So you can find these different ways of strengthening your awareness
Yes.
with the invisible, with spirituality. Hello. Listen. And
We'll fix the tech.
Oh.
Oh, there you go.
all right. So as I mentioned, you can do meditation, yoga, fasting, different ways of strengthening your spirituality.
Yes.
But then my question to you would be, how does the spirit, your spirit, people's spirit, how does that relate to the source, to God, to the unmoved mover, to the first cause? How to you does that relate, the spirit and the soul?
Yes, that's a good question. It's a very extensive question. We can talk a lot about it. We will talk about it tomorrow night, but I can tell, of course, something about it. We can see, where do I start? Maybe this. We have a physical body, and there are also more etherical bodies connected. We cannot sense physically, but they are their energy fields. It's all the body, but there's also something like personality. Body. Personality is the person who we are, the person who is known here in this world, has relationships, and will die, of course, same as the body, personality. And third, the soul. It's bigger. Has much more influence. And then, symbolically of course, spirit. How does these relate to each other? We, as man, as normal man, are essentially body and personality. But we are also soul and spirit. But these are not manifest, they cannot manifest this in our current state of being. So the idea is, and that's an idea, it's not only an idea, it's possible to go a path of transformation where the soul becomes awakened, and if the soul is awakened, it can make a connection with the spirit. And how does that work? Yeah, we can say a lot of that. I think it's good to tell here a metaphor, because that's often clear. If we have the metaphor of a carriage and a horse, the horse is pulling the carriage, and the horse is managed by a horseman or a coachman, and in the coach there is a passenger. And the situation where there's only the horse and the carriage, so the personality and the physical body, then the passenger will never come on its destination, because the horse decides where to go. The horse is a mammal, an intelligent animal. We are also intelligent animals. We are animals, actually, as personalities, animals with rational thinking. What is necessary is that the soul will awaken. And what's the soul? That's the consciousness. The soul we can compare to the coachman. The coachman can manage the horse and can say, you have to go in that direction. But the coachman has to know where the passenger wants to go. And the passenger is the symbol of the spirit, the divine. And the spirit knows about the divine plan, because everything that happens not only by coincidence. There's a big, huge plan, a divine plan, which unfolds itself. And there are many beings involving in that fantastic process. Like angels, to manifest everything, divine plan. And the idea is that these four can be connected to each other. That's about the connection. The first, soul can awaken. It's also called in the spiritual tradition. I can also mention some elements. The body. It relates to the element earth in the Greek elements. And the personality refers to air, earth, air, water. And the other one is spirit, is fire, of course. And we see the process in many symbolic narratives, for instance, in the Bible, in the story of Jesus. Jesus said to a leader of the Jewish, he said, you have to be born by water and fire, water and spirit. And that means that the soul must awaken and the connection with the spirit must be become active. But I know this is very abstract, of course. But
Sorry, what's your view on determinism?
pardon?
What's your view on determinism?
On determinism, that everything is determined.
Yes.
Yes.
Pre-set. That's already going to happen. So you talk about a grand plan.
Yes. I think I understand your question. I think not everything is destined. there is a divine plan and that must unfold itself.
But you talk about dimensions there. You talk about dimensions as well. So like theorize the next
Yes.
dimension is time.
Yes?
And theoretically, everything that's going to happen has already happened.
Yes?
Because we can't go past the third dimension, which is the fourth is time. So that ties into determinism, really. So I think.
Yes, determinism is also related to time in a certain sense. And we have time in these regions, the body, the realm of the body, and the realm of the personality. But in the realm of the soul, there's a complete different perception of time, not the time we know. And to come back to your question, is everything determined? A lot, I think. But we have possibilities to choose what we want,
Yeah, but
to make decisions.
that's another theory.
Yes,
It's like the multiverse theory, where you make different choices, like there's different
Yes.
paths.
yes.
So, but theoretically, they're already determined as well. You've already made them choices before.
Yes.
Okay, maybe I will try say something on your questions. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yes, right? You know, for the first question about how can we explain the first source, let's say, yeah, because you was doubting that how could we know? Yeah, you know, there's only, you know, this is something what helps mind to be catch on, you know. So for me, for example, the first source, I explain myself like something what creates everything by itself. It is not created by anything, anyone. Yeah. So this is something what is this is absolute mystery. We cannot touch it. We cannot. Yeah, but we, of course, we feel it. Yeah, but you know, to understand. Yeah. Yeah. And second of all, this determinism which you mentioned. I think that this is a little bit more complicated because multiverse, you know, actually I'm convinced that we are lacking appropriate words and appropriate paths of thinking about, you know, such a things. It might be explained, but the necessity first is to train, let's say, the way of our thinking. Yeah, because when we are because now we are in a world when we are taught to choose right hand or left hand. Yeah, we have both hands. So determinism exists, but indeterminism also exists. So it is, and simultaneously it works like, okay, we can say that it is something planned, but from the other hand there is also the path which allows to how to say, moderate it. Yeah. So I think that you know, as we said in here, yeah, that
Goes back to
maybe
Hermes as well.
Pardon?
It goes back to Hermes where it says man is both mortal and immortal.
Yeah.
If you think about eternity as not as time but as infinite possibilities, then there cannot be determinism if there are infinite possibilities. It's like a circle with no, you know, no limitation.
That's a good addition. Thank you. Yes, that's right. And I also think it's about your question. It's a kind of intellectual question. It's good to think about it. It's very good to think about it. But the idea of a spiritual path is not to get a lot of knowledge about how and grasp how everything works. It's about living experience, and that's completely different than a mental model.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I just want to see the whole way until you said like about training. I don't genuinely think it is about training. Sorry. You've heard about the theory about psilocybins taking us like to an evolutionary step.
Yes.
About people
Yes.
traveling around like, and that's why Hindus like think of cows as sacred because mushrooms used to grow cow dung and they used to follow them around and they give them their path to enlightenment. So they break down their walls of physical form and then they think about that. So I think personally that like the a psilocybin way of like mushrooms or anything like that, not through training, but like through expansion. It was up to you until that point next, but yeah, I think that's like more of a enlightening way to go through these. Like probably all them theories like through that.
Well, should we take one more question here, then
Yes.
you can go back to your
Right.
presentation?
Yeah, thank you.
Desmond.
Thank you. Actually, what I'd like to say is, we're sitting here in the physical universe and we have got tremendous restrictions on us. We don't have the language or the knowledge of how to explain the spiritual universe. So our attempts to try and expose or understand the spiritual universe is kind of very difficult. It's like being in the bottom of the sea and trying to explain what it is like to fly. So I think, I may add this in, this is always a difficulty, where we actually have got to realize that we are restricted in trying to explain. We don't have the nomenclature together across.
That's right. It's very difficult to find the right words, and sometimes it's nice to create new words to introduce certain concepts. But the way to make the connection with the world of the soul is also by symbols, because symbols, they have not one meaning. They have multiple of meanings, and they can be more experienced than explained. And so the language of the soul is language of symbols. And then we come to the next part of the presentation. This is a representation of the pentagram. It's a symbol for a man who was transfigured by the rose in the heart. Symbols of the soul. There are 9 symbols that are in the book described. So there is, the soul is the center. And here you see a model of the solar system. That is, of course, the sun and the planets. We can have the idea that our personality, our body and our personality are the center of the universe. That is like a geocentric way of thinking. But if the soul awakes, we can become aware that the soul, symbol for the spirit spark in the heart, or the immortal microcosm, that's actually the center. So we have to change our focus from the body and the personality to the soul. Of course, the personality must have its attention. It's very important in the whole process. But not only personality and body, but also the soul, the consciousness. A seed, a very small seed, is a mustard seed, and it can grow out till this soul is a tree. A tree is also a symbol of a living connection between heaven and earth. We can say a lot about trees and about symbolism of trees. I like this one. You know it, of course, the 4 seasons: winter, spring, summer, and winter. It's a symbol also for the spiritual path. If we discover a spiritual path, we are often in a state of winter. We experience everything as dry, cold, and then there can something blossom in spring. And then, of course, summer and in autumn, there will become fruit available. So the idea is to become fruitful, to bring fruit forth. The soul is a tree. This is another way of looking at the soul as a tree. Symbolic trees. Here we see the chakra system. I'm sure you know about it. It's connected with the spinal cord, 7 chakras, root chakra, and the crown chakra here. And there's a connection with abstract symbol, the tree of life from the Kabbalah. And there's also a connection with the so-called Mercurius staff, or the caduceus. We can see the soul also as a flame, or as a traveler. There are many stories about making a journey in the Old Testament. People go from Egypt to the Promised Land, for instance, but also other stories like finding the Grail Castle. This is from the Tarot. It's a very interesting symbolic way of thinking. Soul is a castle. We can withdraw ourselves in our soul, and it's good to do that, to give the soul attention. But of course there must be a good balance, right balance, of course, between both. Soul is a creator. God created man, and man is an image of God, so man is also a creator. The soul can be creative. The soul is a sevenfold being, the seventh spirit. Soul is a mirror. The soul is much bigger than the personality, and if we experience it, it's a huge experience. But also mirror, because man is mentioned to receive the light and then reflect it in the world. And this is a very technical picture. It's a solar plant in the desert. You see many mirrors here, and here is a tower, and all these mirrors, they reflect the sunlight to that tower, and here is generated steam, and with the steam you can make electricity, and that electricity can be used very far distances from the power plant. And the soul is a world worker, because if we go the spiritual path, it can have an effect on the total field of the world, the consciousness field, and it can raise the consciousness field, and by that, humanity can evolve and become free from limitations. The book, also mentioned by George, Mysteries and Symbols of the Soul. This is the first book from a series of 3. The next one is not translated yet. It's in Dutch already available, but it will come available next year. It's about mysteries and challenges of Earth, of birth, life, birth, and no, it's the wrong. I see it. I got it wrong. It must be birth, life, and death. But this is also good, life, birth, death, of course, because there's always life. Birth and death are
interchangeable.
Interchangeable, yes, but life is always there.
Say it in Dutch, it's okay. You can say it in Dutch.
Say it in Dutch.
Ja.
Ja. Mysterieën en uitdagingen van geboorte, leven en dood. Ja. And the third one is already available in Dutch. I shall say it in Dutch first. Mysterieën en lofzangen van God, God, mens. Mysteries and hymns of God, God, man. Yes, maybe there are questions at the moment.
All of the questions are coming from over this side. What about some from over there?
The guy next door.
Anything? Well, yeah, we're going in that direction.
Over there.
You're
Yeah.
next. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want
Yeah,
to
I'll take it round there.
Yeah, but
It's a selfie, isn't it?
So you mentioned tarot cards and tarot symbols,
Yes, I did.
and you said it's a very interesting way of symbolic thinking. Could you please expand on that, please? Just what's your view of it?
Yes, my view on the tarot is it's a very interesting symbolic representation. I read a lot about it, but I think it's a lot misused. It's used for divinations, it's used for playing games. I like the idea, I read in several places, that originally they were used as a tool, say as a tool to become more conscious. In ancient Egypt there were temples, mystery schools, and pupils there, they lived there in the temple, and there were high priests who directed them. And I read several places that the pupils must sometimes, there are 11 pillars on a row in a temple, and a bit further there are also 11 pillars, and on the pillars there are paintings. And it's said that paintings were what we now call the tarot, the Great Arcana, or the Great Arcana? I don't know how to say it. The Major Arcana, that's right, Major Arcana. 22 pictures, and the idea was the pupil had to meditate on that picture, and by meditating on that picture they can come to inner knowledge. It's not knowledge by words, but it is available because knowledge is everywhere. We can pull it from the sphere, from the way of the soul, the realm of the soul, the world of the soul. We can make a connection by meditating on that pictures. And I think that is the real origin of the tarot. Not for divination and not for playing games, but to make the connection with the soul by contemplating that pictures. I think so, yes. Yes?
Can I just add a comment to that? You said something rightly, that now the spirituality is being guided by a lot of the angels and the ascended masters, and their, if you want to accept it, their belief is that we should stay away from the 4D astral realm, so we should stay away from tarot, magic, because we're all attracted to it because we have questions in our life about money, relationships. But if you want to be a true spiritualist, then you should go straight to your soul and try to connect and stay away from these realms of, like you said, magic.
Yes, the problem is, if you use tarot for personal advice and to become a better human, to make the right decisions, you are focused on the personality, and that personality will grow. Nothing wrong with that, but if you make that personality so strong, it's like a wall, a big wall you build around yourself, and then you are not susceptible for the soul anymore. It's not only with the tarot, but many techniques, if we use them with our eye, with our ego, to become stronger, better, more influential, richer, better relationships, all that kind of stuff. If we concentrate only on that, the personality will grow, but the soul will starve. And the idea is that the personality will die. Of course, literally at the physical death, but I mean the mystical death. The ego must die before the soul can manifest itself. And I can talk a lot about that. Yes, I think that's that.
I just disagree about the tarot being magical or any divination or anything like that. That's my opinion. I've done the tarot.
It's true.
I read the tarot.
It works.
And if your spirit, your soul is led to doing it, then by all means do so. If my spirit was led this evening for me to come here, I will do so. Because I don't want my spirit screaming at me at 3:33 in the morning, telling me to do so. So everything works that way. So I'm led to do so, and I agree with the lady there talking about the tarot. If you're led to do so, pick up a few cards and read it and hear what your soul has to say.
You're right in that sense. You can be open for everything. You can read the tarot. You can also read nature if you have certain experience. It's the same. Same, but it's about intention. If the intention is I want to be become a bigger, better person, and if that is the only intention, then you build a false ego. It's like the wolf in the fairy tale of Red Riding Hood. And it it eats grandmother and it eats Red Riding Hood. And we can see grandmother in that story as the microcosm. It has a lot of experience. It's old. And Red Riding Hood is the personality that developed itself. And the microcosm is damaged in a certain sense. Grandmother is sick and it must be healed, and the personality, Red Riding Hood, brings food to grandmother, bread and wine, and then she can recover from all the sickness.
Right, go on then.
Yes, please.
Oh yeah, you were talking earlier about Pauline Christianity. I don't know,
Yes.
have you heard of Marcion, the 1st century Marcion?
Marcion, I read about it. I don't know a lot of him.
Yeah, he says like there's two gods, Jesus is the two gods, and the old God of the Old Testament is a different God, like Demiurge.
Yes.
And they only, the Marcionists, I know they, on the whole, they're not non-existing. They only had the Paulian sort of New Testament. I mean, what's your take on that? Do you think like the we're up against, that's why this world's such an awful place, because the demiurge may have created this world and it's a fake world, and the real world is a different world on a higher plane. Any comments on that?
Yes, it's very complicated. I think the world as we know is not made by the highest God, but angelic spheres. We don't know exactly. There are names of that. There's a mystic from the 5th century. He's called Dionysius, and he wrote about the 9 hierarchies. And Rudolf Steiner said a lot about it. He wrote a lot about it, and he said the world is created by the exousiae in Latin. Very interesting, but I think it doesn't really matter to know all that schemes. But our world is not a divine world. Divine is here, of course, but in our world, everything what manifests itself, it will grow, reach the top, and then decline and will fade away. And in the divine world, there is also a kind of development, but there's no decay. There's a development from force to force, from glory to glory, in Bible terms.
With the difference between a circle and a spiral.
Yes.
You know, if you look at it from above, they're both circles.
Yes, that's a nice symbol, nice comparison. And that's also a symbol for the spiritual path. You go like this, your consciousness raises, and then your action radius also increases. Not as a personality, but as a soul. So you can contribute to the world field, to the collective consciousness, to raise everything.
Yes, in answer to Kevin's question here,
yes,
the 1st century Gnostics, 2nd century, 3rd century, is their writings are found in the Nag Hammadi library, which is very important reading for anybody interested in Gnosticism. And there it contains the early Gospels of Gospel of Thomas, Gospel of Philip, Gospel of Truth, which was the Jung Codex, by the way. Carl Jung, he was given the Gospel of Truth in 1950, and he later went on to say, Jung, he spoke about homesickness of the soul, and he said that all illness on this earth, apart from broken fingers and legs, etc., is to do with homesickness of the soul. Is that the soul realizes that that this is not their true spiritual home, and therefore that manifests itself in sometimes feeling maybe not too good about oneself, in depression, stuff like that, which cannot really be treated on this earth. You can give tablets, take it away, but the real cause is the soul is crying to go back to the spiritual world. And I can recommend the Nag Hammadi library for all of this. It is the original Gnostic texts. And also Paracelsus, who was known as the physician of the soul, he also spoke a lot about this as well.
Every religion spoke about that, though, too.
Not in the same depth as the Gnostics did. They were quite adamant about the creator of this world and the archons and etc. But I think maybe they'll be touching on this in other lectures, because it's a lecture in itself. We've got another question here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, because we are in this life,
Yes?
so this means that everything that we take from the higher self, all the knowledge that we came from there, we should bring it to this life. So my question is how to avoid the fragmentation that we have between the higher self and bring all this knowledge like in practical life. Because yeah, we can like grow our consciousness, but then like bring it to like action here is like kind of difficult, and you get like isolated from your higher self.
Yes.
So what's the way to create harmony between?
There are, of course, many ways to do that. Several traditions, they all have their own practices. And I'm a pupil of the School of the Golden Rosy Cross. And the way they do it, there's a group who recognize the universal teachings in all those religions, and they come together to talk about it, to hear about it, and to work with it. And if you do that as a group, you will become stimulated, you get inspired, and you will attract other energies. And by that way, you can transform as a human being, so that divine can grow in yourself and can manifest itself. And it's not about my will, but thy will be done in Christian terms. So the way the Golden Rosy Cross works is people come together to make these old teachings alive for today, for the present, for the now.
So you mean that by growing your own self, this can be like an automatic things that will happen? Like if you make these awakenings inside your life,
Yes.
this will like automatically shift your energies,
Yes.
and bring you in the right direction in life. Like
Yes, not directly. It's a struggle. It's a struggle. Yes, it's a struggle.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of
Distraction.
Yeah. Oh, yes. There are so many distractions here in this world, and then more and more, and we can get caught up in that distractions. But it's a struggle. We read that in all traditions, because we have certain. We are conditioned in certain ways, way of thinking, and that was good for that moment, but at a certain moment it's not appropriate anymore. If you want to go the path of the soul, all that conditions must be transformed. And it's a bit painful. It's like dying. It's a mystical death. The personality will die symbolically. It's also like peeling onions. If you have onions with many layers, and you want to go to the nucleus, to the center, you have to peel it down and take layer from layer, all false perceptions take from each other, and then you come to the center, to the nucleus. And you cry. If you're peeling onions, you will cry. But it will go over. If you are all these conditions, if they are away, there is something open, and you can receive the light of the Spirit, and that can bring a whole new process of transformation. Yes?
My question would lead nicely from about the spiritual life and what path to take. So in the Upanishads, it mentions about following the path of your fathers,
Yes.
or following the paths of the gods. So the path of the fathers would be culture, would be society, and the path of the gods would be going into the forest, doing asceticism, and severely restricting yourself in order to find something deeper within yourself. So there's distractions in this world, now in the 21st century with the phones, and you still have obligations as well to your family. So with all of that, maybe you can give us some of your insight about living the path of the fathers, or living the path of the gods, and how practically, how would you apply that nowadays to you?
Yes, that's a good question. Also very extensive. I could give a lecture on it, I think. But I want to say some words about it. The way of the fathers, there's nothing wrong about it. We need culture. We need culture to grow as personality, and we have to grow as personality. Because only with a grown personality, fully developed, we can go the path. If there are many disorders, it's not possible. So we have to become a person first before the divine will incarnate in us, before the word become flesh in us. So that's the way of the fathers, and then the way of the spiritual path, the way of heaven, the way of the middle path. There's so many words about it. We have to work with ourselves, and we can withdraw ourselves from the world and do meditation, fasting, etc. We can do that, but we are in our own bubble. If we interact with other people, we become triggered by certain things that are not solved yet. So my opinion is be in a group, be in society, be in a group. You are with others, so you will learn yourself, the shadow side of yourself, and not really work on it, but only observing. And that's the soul. The soul is a principle in us that observes, that is conscious about the feelings and thoughts, and also make decisions. Not all automatically, but conscious. Yes, I think that's it at the moment. Thank you for the question.
I actually would like to pick up this young lady here on struggle, which of course you're quite right, and I think everyone will agree with you. It is a struggle. But then if we look at the obvious things, perhaps we get an answer to this thing that we call the struggle. And that is, all of you have experienced this. But if you take a child, and a child by the age of 3, or even 4, can speak several languages. I've been exposed as a young adult, grew up with societies where it was very common for a young child of that age to speak 4 languages. So you'd say, well, where does that come from? And here I am sitting trying to understand and be free and to express my soul and so on. And this thing we call the mind just makes it more difficult, and the word is struggle. Because we have an intention to do something, and then counter-intention comes in. Oh, I must really get to this lecture, or I must make these notes, I must study, and then something else comes in, I'll do this, and so on. So yes, it is a struggle, but if you actually look at the young child and ask the question, where does this knowledge come from in this young child to speak several languages?
Yes, I recognize that. When a child is born, it's in a certain sense much more connected to the divine world than we. and when it grows older, that connection will loosen, and at a certain age will not be there. There will not be nothing be experienced of the divine world, and that's good. That's necessary to become a person. You first has to become a person before you can go the spiritual path. No?
Yeah, I don't agree with that part.
Why not?
It's essential to be a person. Actually, I've come to understand that you can live without your mind.
Mind is not the highest level of our consciousness. No, there are much more levels, and the mind. Oh, that's the mind is necessary to live here in this world. It's a nice instrument. We have to use it. It's a gift. But if we think that the mind is the highest, I think we are in illusion, because there are all different levels of consciousness we can live from, and that's in essence it's much easier. If you look at scientific research, the researchers have to do a lot of experiments and gather data and analyze them. But someone who can live from the intuition, it's not necessary. In insight, in a flash sight, everything is clear. It's a complete kind of difference. It will not say that science is bad, not at all. I think it's good in its sense, but it's not everything. There's much more.
Is the mind not our jailer?
Is the mind, sorry?
Not our jailer.
Jailer. What is
Jailer.
Jailer. Jailer. Yes. Yes. Certainly. Can be. Mostly it is. Yes. In The Force of Silence, that's a nice booklet written by Madame Blavatsky, the founder of the Theosophical Society. There is the sentence, the mind is the slayer of the real. So, if we live from our mind, it's very narrow. There's much more. And we come in a prison, like the people in the cave of Plato. Maybe you know the metaphor. People are chained in a cave and are fascinated by shadows on the wall that are moving, and they think that's the reality. And they can analyze everything and predict certain things that come on the wall. But when they escape and go up to the real world, to the light world, to the three-dimensional world, they see that there is a complete other world with three-dimensional beings, with colors, with completely different. And that state of mind, that knowledge, is completely different from the people in the cave. So if we have only our mind, we are as people in the cave later.
We go back to the blind people touching the elephant.
Yes, yes, yes.
I've got one over here.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I just want to share from personal experience in case it helps someone. And I'll connect the tarot question and the critical billion-dollar question, how do I connect with my soul question? Because that's what it's on all our minds, I guess. But so I've been to a tarot reader, and she was brilliant. Can everybody hear? So I got all my questions answered, and I got more. I was told about my dad who passed away, what he wanted to say in my next house, which she knew, and it's fine.
Yes.
But I come back to your point, that is very ego-related. And
Yes.
I think we have to kill our ego if the soul is going to be freed. So I just want to remind everyone that the journey of the soul is very different. So my advice to anyone who is interested in the journey of the soul is not to go to a tarot reader, but to get an Akashic reading done, which you probably know and some people here don't. The Akash stores all our soul journeys over lifetimes. So I got that done recently after I got done with all the tarot when I'm in semi-retirement. So I would have fallen off my chair once I got my Akashic, and I recommend a good reader. So I was told I came in during the Vedic times, I actually wrote down the Vedas, but do I remember them? No, my soul probably does. So the question comes back, how do you connect your soul? So I think the easiest answer is that, the mystery schools and the ascended masters have always been around. So Jesus was an ascended master, so was Krishna, so was Christ, so was Buddha, so was Plato, so was Pythagoras. Anyways, so the easiest hope for all of us is that the new teachings tell us the earth is ascending. So you have Gaia, you have earth moving into 5D. And I think that rising tide is the best chance for all the boats to lift up. And then there are some readings out there about the easiest way to achieve this, because we are being assisted by the planetary ascension and light rays coming down. And there are much easier ways, but the simplest way would be just to say, hey, I want this to be my last lifetime on earth and I really want to ascend. So it's your intent. And then there are some very simple tricks, and nothing against this. There's some very simple books now which are called Ascension with Jeans and Red Wine, how you can curse, swear, wear red wine, drink red wine, and still manage this process of ascension, which is in a way disconnecting you to your soul. And you rightly said the Theosophical Society, I think Summit University about 150 years back, and some other people now, are making the job a lot easier now to give us easy ways so you don't have to hang upside down from a tree like this gentleman said. And we've all done that. I've sat in a cave, I was told in my Akashic. I've sat in a cave and meditated. It didn't get me very far, I'm still looking. So, you know, those are my suggestions. Akashic and simple readings now for how you can do this. It's very simple now. As time goes in the next 10, 20 years, everyone who wants to ascend should be able to ascend. Thanks for the time.
Thank you.
Just coming back to this thing about the mind, the early Gnostics, in particular the Nag Hammadi text, is they refer to the mind as the counterfeit mind, and they didn't have this idea of devils or anything like that, but they said if there was a devil it would be the mind, because the mind is the being that controls you. And these days it's very fashionable to talk about the mind, body and wallet, mind, body and soul. I call it mind, body and wallet, because there's a lot of money being made out of this, and it's very popular. But it should really be the other way around. It should be the soul in control of the mind, and the body at the service of the soul. And we do find this in the Palm Sunday, for instance. We have this image of Jesus riding a donkey. In the East, the metaphor for the mind was the donkey. And on Palm Sunday, he rides into the city of Jerusalem riding the donkey. And it's a very esoteric text. I would recommend Rudolf Steiner to, he goes into a lot of these metaphors. See, most people take it as a literal thing, that he's riding in the city of Jerusalem riding a donkey, but if you look at it that he's riding the mind, then it's a whole different thing again. But, sorry, I transgressed maybe.
Thank you.
Right, any more questions?
Yes,
Sorry.
please.
Yes,
No.
please.
This
got
is
one
really
there, go on.
important for
You
me
can-
because my mind
and one
is
down
always
here.
like rational.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, like, if we born that we are connected, and then we get disconnected, and then the point is to be connected again. So why we get disconnected? What's the meaning between?
Connect and disconnecting. In the story I talked about a child or duality?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
We've forgotten who we
What?
are.
Yeah.
It's like Peter Pan's story.
That's
We've forgotten how to fly. Metaphorically speaking.
And what's the point?
Yeah.
Why we
The point
forget?
is, I think, we are here to have experiences, all kinds of experiences, and from that experience, there can come real wisdom. It's different from book wisdom. You can read many books, know everything about texts, but that's not the real wisdom. We have to acquire wisdom by experiences. The idea is that there is a microcosm, an immortal microcosm, that goes many times in the wheel of birth and death, many turns around to get a lot of experience. And at a certain time there will be so much experience that there is the consciousness, I had enough, what next? So much of that experience, and then there can be a longing to something else, a longing to the divine, and that's the opening of the spirit spark, and it can become from a small flame to a huge fire, and then the microcosm has enough experiences, and they can all be integrated in the system, and man can become a new man, inspired by the spirit. So that is the point, to heal the microcosm based on experiences. Yeah.
So do you think like life is about the experience. Like you can know a lot about it, you can like know about every religion, and there is something that nobody knows. Like,
Yes.
there is no answer, well, maybe will be after, or, so you will say like, about all your knowledge, experience, like, life is more about experience and that's it. Like, experience life and you enjoy life and,
Yeah.
like, you can leave ego, try to, like, kill your ego. But at the end, like, also, like, everyone will have, like, selfish ego. Like, you need it sometimes, no? Like, because otherwise...
There is a difference between personality and ego. Ego are attachments. The attachments to all kinds of things, attachments to material things, but also attachment to certain, you can name it, everything you can attach by everything. And the idea is to let go of all the attachments so you can experience purely, and then there is room to for something new to develop. We can have a lot of experience and we can be like in a prison or a labyrinth, go circles around and more experience. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, but at a certain moment, I think, and that's also what the School of the Golden Rosy Cross teaches, there comes a certain state of saturations from experiences. I can make a drawing to explain it. Microcosm and man, physical body, and also has an etherical body and an astral body and a mental body, and this is the microcosm, symbolically of course, because this is two-dimensional and the microcosm is many dimensions. They say 7. I don't know if it's right, but they do like this with 7 dimensions of the microcosm. And we at the moment have only to deal with the 7th aspect of the microcosm. And if a person lives in the microcosm, an earthly life, there will be experiences. And after death, all that experience will remain in the microcosm. And we can do it like this. These are all experiences written symbolically in the microcosm. And the next life, there come more experiences. And next life, more experience. Until there are so many experiences that the person is open for the divine inspiration in the heart, the spirit's heart. And then there can be a connection between the horizontal world, the world we know, the sensible world, and the vertical world, the world of the divine, the world of the eternity. And then we also come to the symbol of the golden, the rosy cross, the cross, the horizontal world we all know, and the vertical world that connect each other with the rose in the middle. It's a way of saying it, and many other ways to say it. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, we've got one more question here.
Yes.
But, I think this might be the last question.
Yes.
Because
So we still have time, yeah?
Yeah, we've got plenty of time and we can carry on.
Oh, yes.
But there you are.
So my question is about the symbols
Yes.
of the soul. As you beautifully demonstrated in your example with the tree, so my understanding is that a lot of tradition used symbols to actually, for awakening and to raise the level of consciousness and for the soul to spark and for us to connect to that spark. So how do you actually use symbols in daily life?
How do I see symbols in daily life?
Yes, so if we talk about symbols, how we can actually use symbols in our daily lives to actually get closer to who we are?
Yeah, there are several ways to work with it. I mentioned the 3 books, the book M, H and T. That seems a bit theoretical, but the book T is easy. It refers, for instance, not only, but for instance, to spiritual texts. If you read them and contemplate on them, that's also a symbolical language. you become more receptible for the world of the soul. But also in nature, if you walk in a forest or walk here in London in the city, you are conscious of everything. You can be mindful and see certain connection of your own life and what you experience. Then you can see certain kinds of synchronicity. You have a question for yourself, it can be a personal question, for instance, and you experience something, and then suddenly you know the answer for the question because you recognize it in the experience. I try to find an example. It doesn't pop up at the moment, sorry. But yes?
I think working with symbols also implies moving away a bit from the structure and the predetermined ways on which we are built. Because usually we try to work with our mind, because that's the main tool that we have in normal life. But symbols really speak to the soul.
Yes.
And so we need to first kind of take down walls that are, the prison of our mind, to be able to connect with these symbols. And then obviously the real task is to manifest the message, the archetype that is behind the symbol, and with behind any symbol really. And so we go back a bit to the question: how do we connect? And so how then can we work with the symbols?
It can be dangerous to work with symbols with the intention to accomplish something. It's, in my opinion, it's more a state of mind and a way of looking at life.
It's a way of listening.
Openness and to raise from the rational mind to a higher form of consciousness. We can learn a lot, and that's interesting. It's also necessary. Read a lot of books, all that knowledge that can be helpful till a certain moment. And then I like the story of a pilgrim who is making a journey, and at a certain point he comes at a river, and he wants to cross the river, but there's no bridge. It is too deep to go through the river. So what does he? He gathers all kind of things, wood and grass, etc. And he makes, how do you call it in English? We say vlot. Raft, of course, a raft. And he goes with the raft to the other side of the river. And then maybe he is, his first idea is to take the raft with him, take it on his back, and then continue its journey with the raft. But that's very heavy, of course. It's better to leave the raft there and go your journey and go light, because the raft brought you somewhere. So all knowledge, all experience here will bring us somewhere. But if we have reached a certain level, we can leave it there and continue our path.
Any more questions? Any more?
Yes.
Yeah. We will have to have a break
yes.
after this one, I think.
Just mention something quickly about the symbols as well. Maybe if you take into a mindset of shamanism, where you can take symbols as omens, and the way you live your life as spirit guiding you. When you live your life, so I'm taking ideas from Mexican sorcery, specifically Carlos Castaneda. So when you live your life as an impeccable warrior, when you live life with high standards, then you kind of turbocharge your way around your destiny. You mentioned earlier about determinism, but the guy's gone now. But I think that the more strength you have in your will, in your intention, the more control you have of destiny. And now that's a contradiction, but I feel like if you live an empirical life, you can see the omens, and that's it.
I think you are completely right. If you are more conscious and live from that, you will become free from all kinds of influences that you don't want anymore. So the soul has a much bigger action radius than the personality. So when the soul governs everything, shows the direction, then one can become free from karma, from all the destiny.
Maybe you have less pollution in you.
Yes.
You like purify yourself. So
Yes.
then you're more a catalyst. You're
Yes.
more of a catalyst for spirit to guide you.
That's right. The body is an instrument, and if it is more clean, energies can be can go through it and have an influence on the collective consciousness and higher it.
Can you do a quick summing up? Or?
So maybe I can read just a piece from the book. It's not from me.
Exactly.
It's by Jan van Rijkenborg. It's the founder, one of the founders of the School of the Golden Rosy Cross. And at the end of the book, I have a quote from him. It's piece. I will read that, and then we have a break. And after the break, there is a contemplative meeting here. Jan van Rijkenborg, he writes, "The gleam of a new reality appears amongst the ruins of what will be soon the past. All new possibility is approaching. On the destroyed hope and annihilated self-assurance of the intellectual public, a new longing will soon be established. Mockery, laughter and slander will soon disappear from their faces, and at last they will listen to the esoterics. Then the sons of the prophets will speak to you of the omnipresent divine wisdom, which is nearer than hands and feet. They will tell you how this wisdom is obtained. They will urge you on a new way of life, a blood-renewing way of life born from the power of Jesus Christ. Then you will discover that the pure white flower will begin to reveal itself in your being. The mystic lily, the lotus of the Eastern seers. This is the entering of the holy halls of abstract thoughts, where the wisdom of God, universal knowledge, can be absorbed in the form of force. It's walking in the light as he is in the light." This is Jan van Rijkenborg. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Andre, for that presentation. It's very interesting. And thank you for everybody in the audience who provided the questions and the discussions. It was very good. It's a pity that we can't go on. I'm quite sure that quite a lot of people in this room were just warming up, and so we could have probably gone on for another couple of hours. However, we'd like to invite you to have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and some biscuits, and then in about 15-20 minutes time we're going to have a short contemplative service, which is of the type which takes place in the Rosicrucian Temple, and we give you a touch of what we do when we have our services. Also, the books are available at the back, and the Pentagram magazines are there. And the meeting tomorrow begins at 7 o'clock. Let spirit, soul and body become one. So I'd like you to say once again, thank you very much to Andre for that presentation. Tea and coffee.